That
Dr.
difference,
Singhvi,
if you
Dr.
compound
Singhvi,
it
that
over a
comment,
few
I don't know
years,
if you
is a
heard it,
huge
came from
gap
Kenneth
that's
Curtis,
opened up,
who's a
and that's
former
where we
VC
have
at
to
Goldman
address a lot of
Sachs.
our
He's joining us from Hong Kong. Did you hear his basic point? That your government now has to unleash political capital. India is losing its situation globally. It's not looking competitive globally. Your government has to bite the bullet and take some tough decisions, appear to be politically strong and confident. But are you in a position to do so? Your response to Kenneth Curtis, please. Dr. Singhvi, go ahead.
I have heard the last part of Mr. Kenneth's remarks. I haven't heard the earlier part, but I've heard your summary. I would absolutely, unequivocally answer in the affirmative. The intention and the desire and the will to take tough decisions is clearly there. I don't think there's anybody better than Pranab Mukherjee to deal with it. But let me add that if you look at a trend system and not merely for a year, I think barring the rate of growth, which is I immediately concede is a real cause for concern. We have been below 7% or 7%, and that's a cause for concern. But barring that, there have been very positive signs in other areas which we are forgetting. Fiscal deficit is bad, but fiscal and revenue deficit is significantly and tangibly down from 2 years ago and 1 year ago. Prices are at unacceptable levels, but they are significantly down on both the consumer price index from 12.5 to 8.5. On the wholesale price index, it's tapered off at 9. So gross domestic savings, they are not bad. Slight reduction, but not bad. Now, these are positive indicators. Any other country, of course, would be patting itself on the back on a 7% growth rate because the global average is 3.3, 3.1. Other countries are languishing. I'm not suggesting, one second, please. I'm not suggesting that India should be self-congratulatory on 7% at all. I think at the minimum we should be somewhere around 8.5. But the point is, there is a glass half full there, there's a glass half empty there. And as far as the real cause for concern for me is overall rate of growth and sectoral. Manufacturing is clearly a cause for concern. I agree. I mean, exports have done very well in the recent past. They're not doing so well now. So there is a cause for concern there.
Piyush Goyal, Treasurer and Rajya Sabha Member of Parliament of the Bharatiya Janata Party, joining us in the studio here. Morning, Piyush. Nice to see you this morning. And Sanjeev Sanyal, quick comment from you on the debate that you're seeing here. You know, obviously there is a disconnect between the expectations and what the government can do or wants to do.
I think clearly, you know, we should not think that, you know, 7-8% type growth rates is a God-given thing for India. Yes, we have sustained it in recent months and recent years, but in order to keep growth going, you have to continuously do reforms. We did major reforms in the 90s and then even in the early part of the 2000s. But the point here is that, you know, at some point, the opportunities that are created by each set of reforms gets exhausted. So in order to keep growth going, you have to do continuous structural reforms while at the same time managing the macro balance along, which is the fiscal deficit, inflation, and so on. So it's like riding a cycle. You have to both keep balance and keep pedaling forward. And the issue here is whether or not this particular budget will deliver at least partly on the fiscal side, if not announce a few good measures on the supply side.
Well, Sanjeev Sanyal at Singapore and Kenneth Curtis was sparking off the debate from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me. Also joining the debate here, Piyush Goyal. Piyush, I want your Manu Singhvi says. He says you need political support. He's putting the ball straight in your court today. Obviously, the BJP has to now tell us where it stands on food subsidies, other subsidies, fertilizer subsidies, rail fare hike. Please don't stand there and just be a spectator to the UPA's troubles.
No,
that's the point.
I have been a spectator. Yeah. But would you like Abhishek to first check with his colleagues, his allies, what their view is before he asks the opposition?
No, we are asking.
Because the bigger issue is whether they have a consensus to come up with any policy, to come up with anything.
What are the 4 things that you want, boss?
I'll come to that, but I think it's very important this debate should have had somebody maybe from the Trinamool Congress to present what they're going to allow this government to do before what we will allow this government. The government has to come up with a coherent policy. Where is that policy?
That's passing
the not at all. I'll respond to that question, but I think ideally my esteemed colleagues, rather than jugglery with figures and statistics, should first get clarity in-house. What they're going to do with this country. Okay. Where is the policy stability? Where is all the fiscal responsibility they are talking of? You know, yesterday they've come up with the economic survey. There's a small paper attached to that that the interest rate is going to reduce for states' borrowings to 9%, subject to achieving FRBM targets. If the central government doesn't achieve it, how do they expect states to achieve it? He's talking about GST. All my colleagues here are wanting to know about our stand on GST. What Swapan said is absolutely correct. There is no escrow mechanism for automatic transfer of funds to the states. The states are very, very disturbed. They have not yet given CST payments of 5 years ago. They're not going to go with a begging bowl to the finance minister every year.
I take your point, but I think, and I'm going to ask this, Hari Bhartia, co-chairman and managing director of the Jubilant Group, joining us from our CII panel. Hari Bhartia, good morning. Sorry to keep you waiting also. Founder of the Hiranandani Group, Niranjan Hiranandani, joining us from Mumbai. So we have two big names from the corporate world. Hari Bhartia, my broader question to you is, you're seeing this constant debate going on. You ask the government what's going on, they'll tell you that you ask the opposition. You ask the opposition what's going on, they'll tell you ask the Trinamool Congress. What effect do you think this kind of a political debate is going to have on the pre-budget situation, the post-budget situation, and what Pranab Mukherjee will do today? Hari Bhartia.
Arnab, I have a strong feeling because this is the last budget before we get into a kind of an election mode. I am expecting to see big steps in reform. Certainly some steps towards curtailing growth in expenditure. And the biggest challenge that we have is how to encourage private investment. Now, private investment, as everybody in the panel has been saying, is directly linked to reform. And there are so many reforms that are pending, some of it which can be done even without the support from the opposition. I think that should be implemented. We should have a campaign style to monitor at least 100 projects which are of infrastructure and large industrial projects, because that's the only way to encourage and build capacity. Because our biggest constraint going forward is that we are short of capacity in the next 2-3 years. And if we are short of capacity, I don't see how we can expect to have higher than 7% growth in the next 2 coming years. So I think what Pranab Mukherjee should do is really look at what is in his control. And I think they have also realized politically that continuing to increase subsidies is not giving them more and more political votes. I think going forward, there would be a balance.
Hari Bhartia says the government has realized subsidies don't work. Subsidies don't work. 1 minute. I want before I come back, because Abhishek Manu Singhvi has to go in 5 minutes. I want him to respond to you. Dr. Singhvi, Piyush Goyal of the BJP has put the ball straight in your court.
One more question.
No, you have
Abhishek, one very important question.
Okay.
Will this government finally give us honest budgets? The last budget was a scam. The last 3 have been scams. They come up with budget provisions which are absolutely never implemented. They come up with figures only to revise them by 15% in revised estimates. Till date, the economic survey yesterday is fudging the figures. I'm saying it on authority. They are fudging the figures. They are talking of a 7% growth when there's no way it's going to exceed maybe 6.2. They are talking of achieving targets on revenues which are not going to happen. It's a complete dishonest budget.
Well, Dr. Singhvi, please respond. I think you heard the substantive parts of what Piyush Goyal of the BJP told you.
Large parts of the earlier debate I have not heard, but the last 2 speakers I have heard, Piyush Goyal and Hari Bhartia, in the last 2 interventions. And since I have to go, just give me my 2 minutes or no. My friends from the BJP should realize that with all this tom-tomming and hullabaloo which they are making, this is a government which has given 9.6, 9.4 and 9% several years. Number 2, this is a government in comparison to this Vajpayee government whose lowest average rate of growth was higher than the highest average rate of growth achieved by the Vajpayee government. This is true till last year. Of course, this time it's tapered off. Remember, our lowest average rate of growth for a 5-year period was higher than their highest. Number 3, they talked about federalism, and one of my friends earlier in the program oversimplified and distorted it, saying I'm against. I want to ask 2 straight questions. Whenever there is an important reform measure brought to the table, and I'm not talking of legislative measures alone, policy measures, forget our allies. We have problem with our allies. We talk them out of it most times. Sometimes we don't. Tell me a single one of those where the BJP has supported it. So let's not the BJP piggyback on the allies, give puerile excuses. Was the BJP a great reformist? Let me complete, please. I've got 4 people out there. Please let me complete. The BJP was a great reformer and supporter in GST, you think? Remember, the BJP talked of a VAT when they were there, and when we brought it, they delayed it by 2 years. And now who's opposing GST all the time? The BJP was a great supporter in FDI and retail. Forget the Trinamool. We'll deal with that. That's our problem. But what about them? So therefore, don't use these great excuses of saying that you are all there for it, for the nation, and it's only our allies who are doing it. You are finding excuses. As far as the point about CII is concerned, let me...
works on the base. The base that the NDA government got was so abysmally low. We were able to push it with structural improvements, took it to 8.4% in our last year. They got a base of 8.4. They didn't do anything over that. They just gave us inflation. We had the lowest inflation in the NDA government. They've messed around with inflation.